The words street gang have been utilized by law enforcement agencies to describe a group of 3 or more individuals who have a common symbol, name, or territory, and who individually or collectively engage in criminal activities which create an atmosphere of fear and intimidation. Street gangs affect urban, suburban, and even rural communities throughout the United States. Each individual gang shares many commonalities that are universal regardless of jurisdiction. The same name, defined territories in which they operate, common ideology which they follow, and similar criminal behaviors. There are 3 core motivations for becoming a gang member. For the vast majority of participants who choose this subculture, they are economics, psychosocial dynamics, and the mythology of gang life. Many within their respective gangs view membership as a status mobility system, utilizing their territory as a base of operations for narcotics distribution and sales, miscellaneous enterprises, and extortion or protection rackets. However, gang membership and attraction to the subculture go beyond the primary motive of money. For most, simply the allure of joining a surrogate family is enough to constitute surrendering their autonomy. For others, it's the magnetism of the myth that encourages them to adopt the gang ideology, the gangster lifestyle, or la vida loca. The gang identity itself is viewed by members as a source of power, protection, and allure. One organization, in particular, has utilized its power and influence among Hispanic communities so well that it has effectively integrated from beyond prison walls into almost every gang in Southern California. The Mexican Mafia. This prison gang has established factions in federal prison, in the California Department of Corrections, and the Arizona Department of Corrections. Gang migration has further enhanced the Mexican Mafia's reach beyond its own aspirations. Urban, suburban, and even rural gangs who've surrendered their autonomy and adopted the ideology of the Mexican Mafia can now be found everywhere in the United States. Deportation has also taken the organization a step closer to internationalization. MS-13 and 18th Street now have established chapters in Mexico and El Salvador. Mexican Mafia members also successfully integrated into the Mexican drug cartels.
My name is Rene Enriquez. I'm 46 years old. I have multiple life sentences. All of my convictions are for the Mexican Mafia. I am currently serving the 19th year of 3 life sentences. January 16th began my 19th consecutive year of incarceration. Contrary to popular belief, I didn't come from the wrong side of the tracks. My family was well-to-do. My father was an entrepreneur. He owned multiple businesses. His major business was resin craft decorated industries. He made custom furniture for casinos and large restaurants and chains across the United States. He also owned a liquor store, commercial property, commercial real estate, developmental property. He was well-to-do. We lived in Thousand Oaks, which is an upper-scale neighborhood. And I remember we had a country club, you know, a hop, skip, and a jump away from our house. We used to go play there as kids. And then we moved to Cerritos, California, which was a budding community, a bedroom community, which had virtually no Hispanics in it. So I come from a good background. My father tried his best. Both my parents are immigrants. My father's from Jalisco, my mother's from Jerez, Zacatecas. And they tried their best in terms of raising us. But I gravitated towards gangs to replicate the behavior of my brother. I thought he was cool, being a chorno, and I wanted to be that way. And I excelled in the gang world. I went to prison when I was about 18 years old, and I never aspired to be a Mexican Mafia member. Never thought that this was what I wanted to be. It just happened. in prison, I met my first Mexican Mafia member, Black Dan Barella, who recently passed away in Victorville State Penitentiary last year. He was the first Mexican Mafia member I met. We had assaulted a northern Hispanic from a rival faction of the Mexican Mafia. And it was just common behavior. You fell into this behavior by virtue of the fact that you're in prison. You're Southern California or Sureño. I didn't try to be a Mexican Mafia member or a soldier or a Sureño. It just happened. It just is. When you go to prison, you surrender your autonomy and you adopt this method of behavior, this way of being. And I noticed that after meeting these individuals, my elevation in the prison society and the subculture elevated. My status rose because I knew Mexican Mafia members. After all that, I was transferred to San Quentin State Prison and really became involved, immersed in Mexican Mafia politics. It was then that I really noticed the path that I was taking. I started admiring these individuals. In essence, worshiping false idols and chasing false gods. But by that time, I was well into it. I was later transferred to a vocational institution. They call it the Gladiator School. That's where everybody goes when they learn how to kill in prison. It was a pretty violent place with multiple hits every day. I recall a time in prison where we could do hits on any given day and get away with them. Program was normal. Where the administration would just go pick up the body and the knife, and it was program resumed, play ball. So it was a really, really violent time that I was on the path towards being a Mexican Mafia member. I was actually inducted after I left DVI. And I was in Folsom State Prison. It was 1985. My padrino, or my godfather, or my sponsor in the organization was Sloppy Corwin Elmore, who was a Mohawk Indian, wasn't even Hispanic. In fact, I was disappointed when I found out Sloppy was my sponsor because I was being housed with titans like Joe Morgan, Nico Velasquez, Black Dan Barella. We had joined up again over in Folsom. Waroshai Shryak, Angel Valencia, Jesse Pano Moreno, Rocky Luna. These are huge guys in the mob. Some of the second wave of members that were made in the organization. And I thought that it would have been more appropriate had one of these individuals sponsored me. Here I had Sloppy Corwin Elmore. He was a big brute of a man, obese, dirty, sloppy. He was named appropriately. And I was kind of taken aback when they told me he was my sponsor, but I gained my membership there. At the time of induction, it was almost rudimentary in terms of its organization. I mean, there was some sense of belonging to a greater cause, and that's what they call it, la causa. But the infrastructure wasn't in place. At that time, it was membership for glorification, solely for the glory of being a member. You didn't kill for money, you didn't kill for financial gain, you didn't do things for material gain. It was solely for the enhancement of the Mexican Mafia's reputation. But that changed about 10, 15 years later when the older individuals began dying. The younger individuals, like me and about 10 or 15 other guys, wrested control. Just by virtue of the fact that we were around, that we had learned, that we had weathered the political storms. The funny thing, though, about my first year in the organization, I knew I was going to defect. I knew that it wasn't right. I knew that there was something wrong. I never felt comfortable in my skin as a Mexican Mafia member. Something told me that I was going to leave. I didn't know when or how or why, but I was always afraid. For some reason, I always feared being placed on the lista, being ostracized. And it's a strange thing, this impending fear of being ostracized from a group which is already so far removed from society. So many degrees from the family, from the home, from society, from general prison society. You're even in SHU, and you're going to be isolated from this minute group. It's almost overwhelming, the sense that there's this impending judgment coming from your peers. And a dysfunctional group of peers at that. So from the initial induction to the first or second year, I knew that I was going to leave the organization. I just didn't know how. As I went along, I learned that violence was a survival tactic in the organization, and I excelled at that. With each hit you do, you increase in your status and your political stature in the organization. So I started engaging in these violent acts. At first for the sheer antisocial aspect of it. And lastly, because it became a survival technique. Anytime politics got heated, we'd whack somebody. We'd isolate the target that was creating the most ruckus in the organization, and we would attack that person, kill them, or eliminate them in some respect. And that's how the violence became so prolific in the organization. We understood it to be a currency that everybody understood, a language that everybody could interpret. Violence was a very effective method for quieting the critics. The history of the Mexican Mafia. The organization was created in approximately 1956 at the Dual Vocational Institution in Tracy, California. Its original founder was Huerta Flores. I knew him personally. He was a really easygoing individual, and his original concept was to create a gang of gangs. They had no panoramic view. They had no foresight. They had no vision. Really, what it was a group of thugs, the most violent in the state of California. They knew each other through youth authority, juvenile detention facilities, and actually DVI was a juvenile detention facility at the time. It was a youth authority. It was dubbed the Gladiator School. I mentioned this in previous interviews. But it was started by about 15 members, and the name La Mafia Mexicana was actually offensive to some members. They thought that it replicated the Italian Mafia, and they wanted their own identity. It was Cheyenne Cadena they came up with the concept of La M. It had distinct Hispanic undertones to it, and it gave the organization its own identity. We then adopted a symbol from the Italian Mafia, the combination actually, which is the black hand. I have it prominently tattooed on my chest, and I think that everybody understands what the black hand is. It's the black hand of death. Back at, I think it was 1930 or 1940, the combination had extortion rackets on Fulton Fish Market and with the longshoremen. The individuals working for the combination, which was in essence La Cosa Nostra, would steal merchandise and goods, crates and barrels, and their hands were dirty. They would lift these crates and place them in an area where they were later to pick them up. Well, unbeknownst to everybody, or to the individuals stealing themselves, their hands were dirty and they would leave a black handprint on the crates. The people who were working in the area knew not to touch the crates and the merchandise with black handprints on it because it belonged to the black hand, the combination. We adopted that symbol as the black hand of death, and that's what most, if not a majority of members have tattooed on them. There are also other symbols in the organization that represent membership. But the organization really was a gang, a prison gang. There was no future aspiration of becoming a massive organization that it is today. It just started off as a group of individuals that had a high propensity for violence, and they thought that they could form a gang of gangs in prison, in essence to protect themselves from racial violence and violence from guards. The hard rules of the Mexican Mafia are pretty simplistic. The organization is based on 5 basic rules. A member may not be a rat, and that is pretty simplistic. You can't inform or cooperate with law enforcement. A member may not be a coward, and that's pretty simplistic in itself. A member may not be a homosexual. A member may not raise a hand to a fellow member without organizational sanction. It has to be voted on by the group. And a member may not have sex with the girlfriend or wife of another member. All these violations are punishable by death without a vote. If it's confirmed that a member has participated in any of these acts, he can be killed by fellow members immediately without repercussions to the member that kills him because he doesn't have a vote. Those are the hard rules. Those are the original rules in the organization. Since the evolution of the progression of the organization occurred, a variety of different gray rules came into play. A member may not politic on another member, which means he may not start a campaign in an effort to discredit him or have him killed or seize his territory. And that's usually done by a process of discrediting an individual by this insidious form of slandering his name. That pretty much happens in all workplaces and all big bureaucracies. There's politics, and the organization is no different. Another rule is that you may not encroach upon the turf or territory of another member. And in effect, stealing, you may not steal from another member. There are a variety of different rules and interpretations. The violation of any rule is reason for death, but the imposition of sanction is dependent upon your political status in the organization. Obviously, as I mentioned before, Mexican Mafia members are natural rule breakers. They're, by history and definition, each of them have antisocial personality disorder. They violated the rules of the family unit, being kicked out from the family home. They quit school, or they get kicked out from school. Ultimately, they get kicked out of society, and they go to jail. Once they come to jail, they get excluded from even the general population in prisons and are placed in SHU. Upon induction in the organization, they're made members of the Mexican Mafia. They're given these rules to follow, which is an impossible proposition. Their whole lives have been rule breakers, and all of a sudden they're given these rules and they're expected to replicate this model of behavior that's almost impossible for them. So all members break all rules. That's just a given. But the imposition of sanction is dependent upon an individual's stature in the organization. Also, membership is for life. That's the first rule given to you when you're inducted in the organization. You cannot defect. You cannot walk away. There is no retirement program for members. You're a carnal until the day you die. Even when you defect, you're still a carnal. The evolution of the Mexican Mafia. It really occurred serendipitously. In the 1970s, a group of brothers were paroled. Mike Delia, Black Dambarella, Weddle Shryock, Alfie Sosa, Joe Morgan. They were on parole as a result of SB 42, Senate Bill 42 being passed, which rendered indeterminate sentences illegal. So everybody was approved by RUAP, released upon parole plans. It meant that they had to release them immediately. So as a result of this, there was a high influx of members into the communities. One of the individuals was a progressive thinker, Mike Delia. He was involved in community outreach programs. His wife was a Senate staffer, I believe. And they appropriated quite a bit of money from federal grants. They had a methadone clinic called the Sunrise House. Individuals began thinking of infiltrating institutions, legitimized institutions, the Senate, receiving federal grants, establishing legitimate businesses. And this actually occurred, for the most part, as a result of Mike Delia and his progressive thinking. After Sailor Boy rolled over and brought indictments against the organization,